Okay, so let's take a look at the bands from today, and let's take a quick look at this action on the day. I'm going to show you something very interesting. So here's part of the update for the bands. So I'm going to go into the indicator, and I can now set, I can set the settings wherever I'm at. So usually I'll be at like a 2.6 setting. So let's just for a second go to like a 2.6 for this setting. Let's go there for one moment, and I'll hit apply, and then you can see the bands refreshed at a width of 2.6 deviations from the mean. But I might want to also say, okay, I want to track this particular market, and this is part of an optimization process. So I can look at like a week's time, run it and replay and say, I want to look at a market that only 5% of the price action is outside the bands. And then I want to look at 7%, run it through the week. Then I want to look at 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever, and dial in what kind of excursions of the fast bands outside of the main bands will work for my approach, at least for the mean reversion trade setups. That's not the only trade setup we have with the dual bands, but that's one of them. So I can go in here and I can say, okay, I want to optimize real quick, and I only want, let's say, 9%, or let's go 7% of all the price action outside the bands for the period I have set in my data series in the days to load. So maybe it's 5 days to load, or 10 days, or 15. So we now have a quick optimization period. So the indicator will right now run an optimization period and then post data for us. So I've selected that, and now I've checked the box. So now I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to do its little thing. Okay, and right away it says, okay, 2.90 setting will give you 6.27%. And it's interpolating. It's not going to the exact number. It's saying, hey, I'm getting you in the ballpark. So that means if I go to like a 2.8 setting, excuse me, I'm yawning there a bit. It's been a long day. If I go to a 2.8 setting, then I'm probably getting up around, a little bit north of 7%. So then with that setting on the main bands for the width, I can go in here, and it automatically set me to 2.9. It adjusted it for me. Now I can say, okay, I want a little bit more price outside the bands. I'm going to go to a 2.8. I'll turn that off. And hey, now I'm optimized. And I'll go run it over the course of a week and see if, and replay and see if I like that. See if the excursions outside the band, there's enough of them, and the extension beyond the main bands is what I like to see. So now let's go in here just to show you, its capabilities. This is a really smart thing that the programmer came up with as a way to give me what I wanted. I wanted to have an ability to say, hey, I only want X percentage of price on average outside the bands, like 7%, 8%, 9%, because I know what works for my institutional FX trading with the dual bands, the way we do it there. So now having this on NinjaTrader for the future side is fantastic. So let me go in here and I'm going to say, okay, optimize outside the bands. I want 11% of price action outside the bands. That's kind of high, but I'm just going to let it do its thing. So I'll hit OK. I've checked the optimization box. It's doing its calculating. And now it's saying, okay, you got to set your bands to 2.50 to be at 10.49%. So if I want to be at 11 or a smidgen higher, then I know right here I'll get a 2.4. I'll turn off the optimization, and now I'm dialed in. I'm probably seeing at least 11% of all closed candlesticks are outside of the bands. And that's a really important feature as you're working with different bar types, because the dual bands don't care what bar types you use. You can use volume bar, tick chart, this Renko, that Renko, Heikin-Ashi, time-based, and so on. So what you'll find out is when you're running it in replay that different widths of the bands, you can then watch how the signals set up to kind of get things dialed in. Like, okay, yeah, that's a little too narrow, too many trades. The excursions outside the bands are a little bit too much for me. And when they come back in, that's another thing is when do the fast bands start coming back in? That's really in the end for the mean reversion side where the meat and potatoes is at. The mean reversion signal events that are happening at these fast bands crossing back inside. So it shouldn't take you very long for maybe you're trading Bitcoin futures, maybe you're trading the YM, maybe you're trading Russell, the ES, to go in and keep playing that instrument on a week's bit of time and go look at and optimize with your bands. And in our training, I have specific training series where I show traders how to dial in your iGrid bands so that they're super optimal for the instrument and time frame you're on. Well, now we can do some auto optimization built right within the indicator. So I couldn't give the programmer any more credit. He nailed it. So now I'm going to go back and I can tell now that I have this feature, I'm going to go about 8%. 7 is a tad low. I'm going to go 8% and I'm going to hit OK. And that's going to be right where I like it. I already know I've got so much experience with bands. Now, lately I've been running mine anywhere from a 2.6 to a 2.7 or 8. So that'll work for that particular time frame. And there we go. Because now my excursions of the fast bands outside of the main bands is now at an area where I know on average I'm getting roughly a little bit north of 7% of the price action. Matter of fact, that's 2.8 to get me 7.1. I'm going to be a little bit closer to 8. So let me go down to 2.7. I'll leave that as my setting going forward. I'll turn off the optimization and voila. Now there's another thing that we've added that traders have asked for, and I'm like, okay, I'll give it to you. We're working on some very unique endpoint smoothing. So each new line segment, that's a fixed plot, because remember, these are no repainting. Each line segment will be affected by some endpoint moving and locked down. So what some traders said, hey, until we get that, can we have something that does the term we use it is auto refresh. Yep, now we have it. Enable refresh, meaning refresh the band's interpretation of price with the calculation that we have fixed in the bands now. We're going to add some endpoint smoothing options in the last update, and then the bands really won't need anything else. So I could say, hey, every one bar close, refresh and lock the plot, refresh and lock the plot, or every 10 bars. So that's in there. Traders wanted something that would do that. I talked to the programmer and boom, he knocked it out real quick. So I'm all ready today. He just gave me the file and it's working. So I'm just going to go do a little bit of test and replay, just make sure everything's copacetic. And I'm already going to put this updated file out to my Gridalgo group. So there you have it. I'm not going to use this. I'm not into that. I don't need it. But there you go. You got 1 bar to 10 bars where you can let the bands at a bar close refresh the calculation on the next segment that's a fixed plot. So that's kind of our, I guess you'll call it our patchwork method of getting to what we will have with the endpoint smoothing. The endpoint smoothing is a little complicated because we're trying to push the limit on NinjaTrader graphics, but this is a kind of a way that'll get the job done with, before we get the endpoint smoothing completely wrapped up, that last major update to the band. So yeah, and all these signals can be turned on and off. You can change the color of everything. You can change color. You can get rid of the triangles. Triangles are just mean reversion candles when we're getting those outside of the main bands. And I've had nothing but really, really good feedback now, especially now for those that wanted the auto refresh, we got it for you. So the band development is accelerating rapidly. And I would say into the beginning of next week, get that endpoint smoothing done. That might be it. We'll have the bands exactly where I want them to be for the long haul. And then it'll just be a matter of adding features. One thing I am thinking about doing real quick on these hooks, where we're getting a hook, I could put in the logic another little signal, a visual cue, that anytime the fast bands, the lower part of the fast band is below the mid band and the main bands are in a uptrend, meaning each line segment is equal to or greater in price than the prior one, meaning, it's a given, the bands are going up. When the fast bands hook both the upper and lower, the first bar close where they're both hooked upward, I could put a little green dot right there. And then, come back again, and we're in the lower half. And I would only do that when the candlestick close itself is in the lower half. That's what I'm thinking. Or should I just put, if the fast band, the lower half of the band? So then there'd be a little green dot, and you could, turn it on, turn it off. The ones that are outside of the main bands, those won't do that because they're already, marked as a primary thing. But all these little pullbacks and uptrend lift in uptrending main bands, there'd be a little dot there, there'd be a little dot there. Get a little pullback and lift on both bands, there'd be a little dot there. I'm gonna do something like that, same thing in a downtrend. That'll be kind of the last little graphics feature, but it won't be a big obtrusive looking symbol. I'll probably just go with a small dot, and then you can just turn those on and off. So anyhow, there you go. We're going to continue to listen to our clients, add items to expand the bands, but the bands right now with the percentage of candles outside the bands is wondrous. I love using that. And now having the auto refresh for those of you in the group that wanted that, we're getting this baby very dialed in for you. Kind of a weird trade day. Institutionals run buy like perpetual buy side all day in the NQ. So anyhow, great talking to you guys. I got some more videos I'm going to put up this weekend of working the bands in action. So onward and upward, a lot of great things from the Grid Algo group. Talk to y'all later, and have a great weekend.